In 1992, Pepsi was trying to gain a share of the market that Coca-Cola had in the 12th largest soft drink consuming country in the world, the Philippines. The strategy that Pepsi would use to avoid falling behind and secure its place in that country's market was quite simple, and it had already worked in other countries like Mexico, Argentina, and Chile. It was a lottery called Pepsi Number Fever, capable of turning a winner into a millionaire overnight. On the inside of each Pepsi bottle cap, there would be a lucky number, and at the end of each day, Pepsi would reveal the winning number. Some numbers on the caps would entitle the winner to 100 pesos, which was about $5. But the grand prize was worth 1 million pesos, which, for Filipinos, was about 611 salaries, a sum that could change anyone's life forever.
And congratulates the first millionaire?
The strategy worked very well, before it ended up killing 5 people. Pepsi's sales grew every month, and its market share, which was about 19%, rose to 25% across the country. That was a real punch in the face for Coca-Cola, and the Coca-Cola executives in the Philippines were going through terrifying days. Nothing could stop the advance of their rival. About 50,000 people had already claimed the smaller prizes, and within weeks, Pepsi's big lottery had already made 17 Filipinos multimillionaires. The marketing campaign quickly became a national phenomenon. People kept every bottle cap they found, even searching through the trash, and there were even cases of people getting into fights over a winning cap. The Pepsi executives, of course, proudly stated that more than 63 million Filipinos were participating in the lottery. That number represented a little more than half of the country's population. All of that turned into a collective hysteria that kept filling Pepsi's coffers more and more. But the strong wind that was blowing in their favor soon turned into one of the most disastrous marketing campaigns in history. With the incredible success of Pepsi Number 1 Fever, the executives decided to extend the raffle for a few more weeks. On the night of May 25th, the news aired as usual, and thousands of people were in front of their televisions, saying goodbye with their fingers crossed. Number 349 was announced by the journalists, and thousands of Filipinos rushed to check the bags full of bottle caps they had collected. People started shouting and dancing with so much joy, and the streets began to fill up with winners overnight. Pepsi would have turned hundreds of thousands of Filipinos into millionaires. The winning bottle caps were closely monitored by Pepsi. They knew exactly how many winners each stage of the drawing would award. Only 2 bottle caps with the number 349 were released with the security code that guaranteed their authenticity. In other words, the grand prize. But somehow, 1,000 bottle caps with the number 349 sealed thousands of bottles that ended up in small markets all over the country. None of them had the security code that the 2 real ones had, but nobody cared, nobody bothered, and nobody even knew what that code was. The Pepsi executives quickly had to put out that fire and give people an answer. They publicly claimed that a computer bug was responsible for making a bottling company print thousands of caps. But legend has it that Coca-Cola insiders were responsible for sabotaging Pepsi's campaign. The Pepsi versus Coca rivalry in the United States happens in a more regulated way, so to speak. But countries like the Philippines end up becoming a real free-for-all ring for these 2 brands. So even though it's just a theory, it's a possibility that's hard to rule out. Even so, Pepsi decided to offer a consolation prize of 100 pesos to everyone who had a cap with the number 349 printed on it. An action that by itself already represented a loss of $6 million for Pepsi. And even such a high price wasn't enough to put an end to that nightmare in the Philippines. The original prize, of 1 million pesos if converted, would be around $50,000. The fact that Pepsi decided to give 100 pesos, which is $5, called that amount a consolation prize, and thought everything would be fine, only served to make people even angrier. A nationwide boycott was launched against Pepsi in the Philippines. Everything and everyone carrying the company's logo was attacked. The protesters were raining stones down on Pepsi's factories before the police were called in to contain the crowd. A homemade grenade was even thrown through the factory window. The explosion resulted in the deaths of 3 employees who couldn't escape in time to save their lives. The trucks that delivered Pepsi to small markets now had to travel with an armed guard in the passenger seat. A teacher named Aniceta Rosario went out to buy rice, and when she was almost at the market, a Pepsi truck parked at the entrance. It was just enough time for someone to throw a Molotov cocktail at the truck, which, unfortunately, exploded in the direction of the teacher. This resulted in her death and the death of a 5-year-old girl who was passing by at that moment, in addition to 5 others who were injured. Any spherical object with the colors red, white, and blue was more than enough to spark people's anger. Even the Pepsi representatives were getting beaten up in the streets. The chaos caused by Pepsi during the Amber Fever had already killed 5 people. Pepsi was in the middle of a disastrous year in the United States. Dozens of people claimed to have found syringes inside soda cans, a rumor that the FBI would later prove to be a hoax. The new version, called Crystal Pepsi, which ended up going down in history as one of the most failed products, was returning ridiculous sales numbers. And the then Pepsi spokesperson, Michael Jackson, was being accused of pedophilia, which made him cancel tours and claim that he became addicted to painkillers after his hair caught on fire while he was filming a commercial for Pepsi. And when the executives thought the situation couldn't get any worse, they were surprised by an organization called Coalition 349. Coalition 349 was formed by a priest named Vicente Del Fierro, and the main goal of this group was to take the case to the highest courts of American justice. The group also received a special incentive, 10,000 pesos, which were donated by Jesus Sodran, who was none other than the chief executive officer of Coca-Cola in the Philippines. During the protests, several people witnessed certain individuals setting fire to Pepsi trucks. The police later managed to identify and capture these people, and to the surprise of the newspapers, they were 3 mercenaries paid by Pepsi itself to blow up the company's branded trucks. Bitter and regretful for having hurt people, the 3 men confessed that Pepsi would reward them very well if the mission was successful. So, it was all just an attempt by Pepsi to make Coalition 349 look like a hostile and controversial movement. But the plan backfired, and for months, thousands of protesters kept demonstrating, even angrier than before. Vicente Del Fierro, armed with hatred and a megaphone, turned his life into a battle in search of some compensation while leading Coalition 349. According to him, this whole story was no longer about the premium, but about third world countries being exploited by multinational corporations. Del Fierro was determined to sue Pepsi for $400 million alleging false advertising. Pepsi responded by filing a lawsuit against him for slander and defamation. He managed to take the case to New York, and there he said he hired 2 American lawyers to handle the case, but the United States courts claimed that the case should be heard in the Philippines themselves. Even though Del Fierro returned empty-handed, he was still willing to continue his fight for the 349 coalition. During all these years, Pepsi had trouble finding a chief executive officer to run operations in the Philippines. No one wanted to deal with the mess that the number fever caused in the country. In 2006, the Supreme Court of the Philippines finally put an end to this story and ruled that Pepsi had not been negligent. As you might imagine, Pepsi's sales dropped significantly and Coca-Cola regained all the market share it had lost. Pepsi's reputation was so damaged that even a local soda brand called Cosmos managed to surpass it and sell more than Coca-Cola's rival. Del Fierro managed to get rid of the lawsuit that Pepsi filed against him, but even so, he never won a case against Pepsi. But the legacy that he and Coalition 349 left helped to strengthen consumer rights in the Philippines. Aside from the million-dollar losses, Pepsi came out relatively unscathed and was not found guilty of any harm caused by the Pepsi Number Fever campaign. But because of this mistake, in the Philippines, there's a slang expression, to take a 349, which to this day, for people in that country, means to get scammed. So, what did you think about this whole Pepsi story in the Philippines? I have to admit, I found it bizarre. And I just wanted to quickly leave a thank you here to Gustavo Machado Teixeira for suggesting the idea for this video's topic over in the community tab in the comments. Thanks, Gustavo. Really appreciate it. And if you'd like to see any topic covered here on Visionary Intelligence, go ahead and leave your suggestion in the comments. And leave a like too, because I know there are people who enjoy the content but end up forgetting to hit the like button. And also, if you're not subscribed, take the opportunity to subscribe. A big hug to everyone and see you in the next video.